Welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Welcome back to another episode of the Agents of Innovation podcast. I'm here in Oviedo, Florida, just outside Orlando, and I'm here sitting down with Camila Puliodo. She's originally from Colombia, immigrated here almost 2 decades ago, I think. We're going to get into that, and is now here as a U.S. citizen, right?
Yes, I am.
So Camila Puliodo, but she goes by?
Camila.
Camila. So Camila, welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Thank you, Francisco. Thank you for having me here.
You're certainly welcome. Thanks for being on. And I just want to remind our viewers, I believe this is now episode 129. We've had 129 episodes of the Agents of Innovation podcast. If you are not yet subscribed to the podcast, however you're listening or watching, please go in there right now and subscribe so that you'll be the first alerted to future episodes. Also, if you can give us some likes, 5 stars would be great. That would be really great because that will help more people learn about the podcast. And if you could comment, maybe during or after the episode, let us know what you thought about this episode. If you're listening to this on, say, Apple or Spotify or any of the other major platforms that you listen to podcasts on, but you might want to watch this episode, you can come over to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type in Agents of Innovation Podcast, and you could sit here and watch Camila and I want to thank our mutual friend Ben and Christina Newman. They both are part of the Fearless Journeys community, which if you're interested in that, a lot of our former podcast guests are now featured innovators in the community. And so you can connect with them directly, learn from them in online coaching sessions, join our book club, come on some of our great group trips. And, Ben and Christina have come on several of our trips. And actually, we're going to be going to your country in October, to your former country, Colombia. And so that'll be really a lot of fun. But I've traveled with them to Guatemala and also with Christina and her father, Fred, to Uruguay and Argentina. So on some great Fearless Journeys group trips. So you can learn more about Fearless Journeys at fearlessjourneys.org and join our community there. Also, just wanted to say thank you again to everybody, and thanks to Ben and Christina for providing this space for us today, for us to actually be able to do this podcast here. So back to Camila and her story. So Camila, tell us a little bit. First of all, what company do you have? And we're going to get into this, and we're going to go back in your history and learn how you got here. But tell us a little bit right now your current role.
Yes, thank you for having me again. And I am the president and the founder of Target Translations and Interpretations. This is a small business in Orlando, Florida, and my role is pretty much all the hats.
All the hats. At Target Translation and Interpretation?
Target Translations and Interpretations.
Yeah, great. We're going to get into the dual sides of that, but you wear all the hats, including the hat of founder and CEO?
Yes.
Great. So Camila, you grew up in Colombia. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing in Colombia, including your education and your child and teenage years there.
Well, I grew up in Bogotá, Colombia. I was very fortunate to have, like almost all my family there. Growing up in a culture where family is a big part of our life. Growing up, and I grew up around a lot of cousins, aunts and uncles, going to the farms outside of Bogotá, of the city, and enjoying the privilege of the bilingual education, which I didn't know back then, but it was going to be the basis of my journey in the United States and as an entrepreneur, because that's part of why I was able to become a certified court interpreter and a certified medical interpreter, and start my business as well.
Wow, that's great. So growing up, you had the opportunity to learn English.
I did.
Yeah.
It was a fully bilingual school in Bogotá, and coming here, I realized that not everybody had the privilege of coming to the United States already knowing the language. And that's when I really understood the need for bridging the language gap for these people who needed access to critical services in the United States, but didn't have the language skills to do so.
Yeah, so in Bogota and just in Colombia in general, as you grew up there, how much where did you go in your educational journey? Did you go to college in Colombia?
So I attended the Universidad Nacional, where I studied physical therapy, and I was very passionate about disability and rehabilitation. That's when I think started my, that was one of my first steps towards doing something I'm very passionate about, which is giving people the access to the same footing as everybody else. So if they have a disability, then I was able to be part of the process of healing and helping them get to have access to those things. And that's part of my language passion here as well.
So you started with physical therapy.
Yes.
And did you graduate with a physical therapy degree?
So I did not graduate with a physical therapy degree because I came here just before I finished my thesis.
Okay.
And that was one of my... one of the things that made me feel self-conscious. And now I realize that kind of self-consciousness was only in my mind. But all the things that I've studied there were so important to develop who I am right now and the kind of professional that I am now.
So when you said self-conscious, was that in regard to the language?
No, it was in regards to the fact that I didn't get to finish the degree, even though it was just a few months, shy of my thesis dissertation, because my family had come here, so I had to come here. And then in Colombia, education is very important, as it is here as well. But it was something to pursue, and that's what also helped me motivate myself to do it again here, which I did.
So you arrive here, and you're college age, you were in the middle of college, kind of.
Yes.
And what did you go right into college here?
So a couple of years after, actually I became a mom, and then I started college again. And it was a whole different experience, but it was wonderful. My son was actually going to the same college as a pre-K at UCF, as I was going to UCF as well.
UCF has a pre-K.
Yeah, for students.
So you were going to college with your son.
Yes.
What were you studying at UCF?
Biology.
Biology.
Yeah.
Wow. So you go from physical therapy to biology, both kind of, medical, kind of science, medical.
Yeah.
So when you did you graduate with a biology degree?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do right out of college?
Right out of college, well, I wanted to pursue physical therapy again. Physical therapy here is a doctorate degree, so you're required to have a bachelor's degree, which is why I did biology, which I loved and enjoyed. But by then, life happened. And I needed to work. I was a single mom, and I needed to work. So I had already been working as an interpreter, as a freelancer for other companies. And I wanted to continue working, but it was not enough. And so I started to look for jobs in biology. I had already been working in a laboratory doing stem cell research as a student. But after that, I found I found that it was very hard to really find a job with a bachelor's degree in biology only. And I also wanted to be with my son. And it was a combination of things, and it was a really important point in my life where I needed to work. I was not willing to work any job that will not require me to be with my son as much as he needed me. But I needed money. So I started to work, and I went through a journey that was a short-lived journey where I ended up working for minimum wage in a...
And what were you doing in that minimum wage job?
I was at a company where I was in a warehouse packing screws and nails. And that was a wonderful experience because I was so bored in the job that I started to listen to audiobooks. One of those...
Audiobooks?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so while packing and screws, you don't have to think much. So I started to listen to this audiobook about the life of Obama's mother.
Obama's mother?
Yes.
Wow.
And her life totally inspired me. She, as you might know, she's an anthropologist, and she lived in Jakarta, and she did a lot of research in microeconomics, and she inspired me to start my own business. And so when I finished that book, I quit this job, and the same day I went to SunBiz.gov and I started my own business.
Wow, that's fantastic. So let's back that up there a little bit, because you graduated from UCF with a biology degree. Your hope was to get some kind of career using your biology degree. You talked about doing research,
Right.
Stem cell research, maybe in labs. You talked about on the side, I think, is this what you said, that you were, to make some money, you were doing translation
Yes.
for other companies. And then what was the reason you said you had to go get this minimum wage job? Was it a second job or the only job you were able to find at the time?
It was the only job at that time. I did it
Packing screws in a warehouse?
in a warehouse, yeah.
I hope they had AC.
It was hard, but it was really humbling. And you do what you gotta do. But it was very inspiring, and sometimes you have to be pushed to that place where you just jump higher. And I was so relieved, and I was very inspired, really. I mean, by the situation, and then also I didn't know then, because I had been going through this path where I was looking for healthcare professions, but really I was able to listen to myself, and interpreting that I had been doing before with for other companies called me, and it was my calling. I didn't even know that this was such a great profession, because, and I didn't consider this before, because in Colombia, since I was born, I had a speech impediment. And obviously, it would never occur to me that I should just become an interpreter.
Wow.
But when I was doing this job, I realized that I was able to do this, and it was so empowering. So that's why it was a lot of factors that took me to this place where I really took this leap of faith in myself to do this job, because it had been so empowering to work already as an interpreter. I worked over the phone, interpreting, for example, for 911 calls.
Wow.
Things that were so important. And my voice, which I was so self-conscious about, as you can imagine when you have a speech impediment since you were born. I mean, of course, it had been gotten better, but I still had some times when I was self-conscious, and the fact that my voice was helping save lives.
Yeah.
Helping people communicate in critical situations, having access to services, federal services, which I will explain a little bit in a moment why federal services are very important in terms of language access. That was only happening because of my voice and my bilingualism. So, I just fell in love with that path, and here I am after over a decade of having my company providing these language services.
That's amazing. So I just want to go back to some parts of your story there. First of all, you took a job packing screws with a college degree. I mean, you were an immigrant here, but you were very highly skilled. You had almost completed a full college degree in Colombia. You start at UCF and you complete a whole different degree there, and so you then go, looking for jobs, and you also have a big responsibility in your life. Your son, you're a single mother, so you're like, I need a job where I can be close with my son, and so you find this job that's minimum wage because there's a lot of us that have dream jobs we want to have or careers that we envision, but sometimes the job isn't available at the moment, but there are bills to pay. And so we sometimes have to humble ourselves a little bit and just go get a job that puts money in the bank and pays the rent and, pays for our meals and things like that. And not only mention that, you have a son you're taking care of as well. So I think that's very good and honorable. And I think a lot of people should take, right now that you might not be in the job you want, or the job you want might not be available. But, getting a job, first of all, not just of any job, right? Puts money in the bank, but also gives you skills and experience. You also then continued your self-education. I'm a big proponent of lifelong learning. I hear this from a lot of entrepreneurs. And also I want to remind people who listen to this, I say this all the time, almost unprompted on almost every podcast. And this was unprompted. You just heard it. Somebody mentions a book or something that inspired them. She was listening to audiobooks while she was packing screws. Right? Let's make the best of my time, and get some education. There's a lot of self-growth books out there. I love books like Atomic Habits and Start with Why, and a lot of these books we use in the Fearless Journeys community. But something that really inspires a lot of people are biographies or even autobiographies. Mm-hmm. It's hard to actually assign books like that to people. Sometimes I will. Like I love Booker T. Washington's book, right? Like Up From Slavery. It's a great book, but you just had a book. I didn't even know that Obama's mother wrote a book, right? I know who she was. I know a little bit of her story, but I didn't know she wrote a book. And then it's a biography where you heard something in her story that inspired you. Yep. Like, I can do this. And then you had this little bit of, experience with doing some interpretations and translations and thought, I could do that. I could have a whole company. I could do... There's a lot of opportunities out there. And what's really amazing when you hear your story is that you had a lot of self-conscious stuff that, and when we hear self-consciousness stuff, it's fear, and it's fear of things that we create, right? It wasn't like your fear. There's real fears, like you're standing on a cliff and you get a knot in your stomach because your stomach and your body is telling you like you could die if you go over that cliff, right? So that's a real fear. But then there are fears we kind of make up in our heads. Like one fear was I came to this country and I didn't have a college degree and I felt like self-conscious about that. There's a lot of people who were born in this country that don't have a college degree that may feel self-conscious about that. So that was one. And then the second one was your speech impediment that you said you had from a young child. And like you're in a field where you're literally talking in a different language and helping people translate, and you are the voice. And what was cool about that story is that some of the early ones where you were literally the voice in an emergency situation for 911 calls. So that's fantastic. So your company, you started it about a decade ago, a little more than a decade ago?
Yes.
Target Translation and Interpretations.
Yes.
And so first of all, as we move forward in that, can you just explain, you have translations and interpretations in the title of your company. It sounds like it could be redundant, but it might be two different things. So tell us the difference between that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I actually made a video on YouTube explaining that very difference. So translation talks about the transferring of a text, of a written text in a language into a text in a different language. So let's say you have a contract that's in English and we can translate that into a contract in Spanish so that the person who is limited English speaking might read the same contract accurately and have the same access to the information that you have. The other side of the services is interpretation services. So interpretation refers to the spoken transferring of the message. So somebody is speaking and like in English, and the interpreter interprets that into the target language. So that would be Spanish or any other language, and vice versa.
So when it comes to the translations, a lot of us now are familiar. Maybe we're traveling in another country or speaking to and now we have access to all these great apps like Google Translate. And so we can take the text of something maybe we're reading or maybe something we want to say, so we can translate it to somebody maybe over a text message, maybe in real life, in person, whatever, over an email. So there's also a lot of we're developing a lot of new technologies like artificial intelligence, AI. Maybe there's some talk about AI providing some translation. So where do you see the translation services you're doing? Because you're not just trying to translate a text or something, right? You're translating a contract, maybe for a lawyer, for a client. You're translating all sorts of very important documents. So where does the human element of something like your company provides compared to, say, a computer-generated translation app?
I personally have been very impressed by the technology nowadays, but the language is a human endeavor because it is attached to culture and it evolves with time. So they've gotten really good, but not perfect. And when the stakes are high, you need the best possible translation or interpretation available. When you are in court and your case and your livelihood and life future is on the line, you don't want to risk it, and you don't want a computer to misinterpret anything that you're saying or that you're understanding, because that is your right to access the legal system in that case, for example. But it's complicated because culture changes. I mean, when I don't know, like 15 years ago, in English, saying this is bad, it was bad. Now it's bad. To the kids, it's really good.
Yeah. To say the word bad. Yeah, I'm like Michael Jackson. I'm bad, right? I think that's a good point. So translation on a text could definitely miss that. Even interpretation, if you were to have a computer try to do that, like a robot or something in court, that would miss a lot of that type of stuff.
Or funny things happen. Like, for example, when I was doing the internship at stem cell research, I was trying to help develop a new laboratory that was being set up in Panama, in the country of Panama. And it was with Johns Hopkins hospital there. And they sent an email. It was a simple email. It was not legal, but it was a simple email actually requesting some items that they needed to purchase over there. And they needed stools, some like instruments for the lab. Well, they ordered poop stools because the translator...
So they needed stools to sit on, but they got stools...
because they did the Google Translate.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't know, maybe it's for some experiment.
That's really interesting. So, in your work, so you're based here in the Orlando area, and tell me some of the kinds of typical clients you have, some of the people you work for. I mean, you don't have to give specifics, but I mean, just the general types of companies, government, nonprofit, like what kind of people do you work for, and give us an example of the kind of work you would do for them.
So our main clients are attorneys whose clients might speak a different language than English, and even though some of them do speak some English, they feel more comfortable in a legal setting to speak in their language, in their native tongue, to express themselves and also to really understand everything that they are being told. But also we work with individuals who need to go to immigration. They need to get an interview with a potential employer. Parents who need to go to talk to their kids' school teacher, and they might need an interpreter to be able to communicate with them. We also provide interpreters for conferences for businesses around the world who come to Orlando, which is a really business hub internationally, and who come to do a conference. And so we provide interpreters for conferences in a myriad of languages.
So if someone's looking for an interpreter, maybe it's for a conference or maybe they're a lawyer, whatever the case may be, how can they find you? Do you have a website? How can they look you up?
We have a website. is www.target-translations.com.
Okay, target-translations.com. And we'll put the website in the show notes, so however people are looking, they can find you there.
They can also call our office, and like all the contact information's there. But they just call us and they tell us what they need, and we are really good at guiding them, because sometimes they don't even need the services they might think they need, and we can guide them through the best possible options, including some cases where they can get a free interpreter or free services that they might not be aware of.
Now, how is it free? How can they do something for free?
Because of Title VI. So the act, the law, Title VI, states that every person in the United States who has the right to have an interpreter, to have equal access to any agency, government agency, or any organization in the United States that receives federal funds. They have the right to have equal access as everybody else to those services, and if that means that they need an interpreter, they should have one.
Wow.
However, it varies from state to state, and in the courts in Florida, that is not being provided for civil matters, which is why we have the non-for-profit.
Okay, so in addition to the for-profit company, Target Translations and Interpretations, you also have a non-profit. What is the non-profit called? And tell me a little bit of its purpose.
So the non-for-profit is called Language Access, and Community Language Access.
Okay.
And Community Language Access, the purpose of that is to fill the gap for the people who cannot afford the private services that Target Translations and Interpretations provide, and they can apply to the organization, and if they qualify, they can get a free interpreter and free translation services, or discounted rates on those, because without that they don't have access to that like an eviction case, they're being evicted, and that's not covered by the government of Florida. It is covered in other states, but for some reason, it's not. But I'm not gonna wait until others solve that problem. So we really wanted to give that.
By the way, that's a really great part of the American story in some ways, in that a lot of times when government doesn't do something, people will usually step up, including through philanthropic efforts like community language access. And I assume that has its own website as well?
As well, yes. It has a website that was built by another non-for-profit that was amazing and helped us out with that.
That's really amazing. So we got a lot going on here. Let's go back though. One part of your story I want to talk about. So you're in the you're in the warehouse packing screws, minimum wage job, 2 college degrees basically, and you're listening to this these audible book. You get inspired to want to start. You had done some translation and interpretation for other companies before. How did you get that start? What was your first steps that you took?
So it was pretty abrupt, but I think the passion, all the rivers were converging into this ocean of awesomeness. When that day, I was like, I looked around and I said, what am I doing here? I have so much to offer. I was also helping them pack the screws very well done.
Well, you got to, whatever you're doing, do it well.
But I really thought, this is my calling. And that day that I quit, because actually also they took away my phone because they thought I was being distracted by the audiobooks. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I had never been reprimanded as an adult before. And I said, you know what? This is the last day here. And I said, I need this job, but I couldn't find a job that allowed me to be with my son and allowed me to feel passionate about what I was doing. So I gave myself that job. And that same day, I registered my company and I went out and I sold my first contract to a company of an engineer friend who had advised me that they needed to translate a whole book of over 1,000 pages of specifications, like engineering and architect specifications book to build a huge building in Panama, in the country of Panama. So I went there and said that I could do it. And it took a couple of weeks to negotiate this, but we got it, and I was full immersed, and that was my first job with the company. And we did such a wonderful job that it just took off, and I loved it.
So how did you, so you knew somebody that had this opportunity for you to provide some translations for this big job, this big book, in a sense, engineering related in Panama. And so how did you find other customers early on? Yeah,
so I didn't have any business training or marketing, and all I had was the knowledge of the language and the previous knowledge that I had gained from the other companies who gave me the chance to work for them as a freelancer. And I realized that I didn't have. So it was hard at the beginning. That's why I had 4 jobs at the same time that I was starting my business. And when
whoa! 4 jobs. So what? So I know you left the screw packing thing.
Interpreting.
So you 4 jobs interpreting.
Like as a freelancer.
You were working for other companies?
As a freelancer, but it was slow. But it was slow, and I realized, I could do this, and it was big companies who hired you because you're bilingual, and I knew that they started to do more research into what I could do, and I could get certified, as a court interpreter, as a medical interpreter, as a translator. And let me tell you, the tests for these certifications are not easy at all. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do the best, because, you know, they were hiring just bilingual people. I wanted to actually be certified and do the same and hire only certified people. And that's what I do now. So when I started to study this, I was fascinated. I loved studying, and I passed the test, and I passed the court interpreter test, which was very hard, and that was another challenge that just pushed me through my insecurities with my language disability, which I had. But I passed, and I got certified as a court interpreter, and I felt unstoppable. But I kept working because, as you know, starting a business is slow. And everybody told me, 75% or 85% of the businesses shut down the first 2 years. And for some reason, people discourages you to start your own business because they're afraid of doing so or something. But nobody told me, oh, yeah, go for it. It's super easy. Nobody. And I just didn't care. And I kept my 4 jobs for about a year, then 3, then 2. By the 3rd year, which was way past the due date of failing, I was able to keep only my business. And here I am, after 10 years, living off only my business and creating jobs for other interpreters, because we also provide over 100 languages of interpretation and translation services.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, one thing I thought that's really interesting in your story, and it's becoming more prevalent for a lot of people today, is picking up freelance work, right? So the internet in some ways today, and all the remote work opportunities where people could kind of do some jobs from anywhere. But there's a lot of ways people are just, so when you said you had 4 jobs, you know, I'm still schooled in the thought, as much as I live this and know this, I'm still schooled in the thought when I hear someone say 4 jobs that they have like 4 employers, right? And all these things, and like maybe they're part-time jobs. That's what I was thinking when you said that. But what's interesting is when you think of a job, it's almost like, you know, I think one of the maybe not original, but kind of classic ideas of freelancing in our country, maybe in the 20th century, is something like what actors do, right? It's very rare that an actor would get a job that's like the same job, right? They go from, say, like a theatrical production to a television show if they're lucky, to maybe a movie production. And when that movie production's over, that job is over. And maybe they have a relationship with a director or a screenwriter or a producer, and they get another job, but they're separate jobs. So I think that, and they're kind of some of the, I don't want to say original, because I'm sure it goes way back further than that, but just maybe like an old school freelance type job. But in this case, you also found jobs, particular maybe contracts for a particular role for a temporary time with a different company or a specific project. Maybe it's a project management thing, and you're able to manage 3, 4, 5 different jobs at one time while you're earning income, getting experience, and maybe setting that path for yourself to say, hey, now I've proven I've got some money saved, and I've also proven some skill sets, and I now have learned how this business works. I'm ready to start my own company. And then you did that, and then your own company, you have all sorts of new clients you're picking up, and then as you're going forward, maybe you start to get really successful, and the work is overwhelming for one person, so that gives you opportunity to hire more people, right? But it's great. It's very. Another thing you said there is about this idea that you didn't find encouragement from anyone, right? A lot of people will tell you all the negative statistics, all the failures. You can't do it. It's tough. Don't even go down that path. It's a waste of time. And yet, what was it within you that you believed you could do it? If you weren't finding this belief outside from anybody else. Why did you think you could do it?
So I mean, not everyone was negative. Of course, there was some good friends who were like, "Wait, if that's what you want to do, go for it." You know, my family, my mom, my son, who's been really my inspiration for everything, and that is, I think that's where I really found my strength, is this mother instinct, maternal instinct, which is the strongest that I've ever known. You just do anything. There's no doubt that you will succeed because you're a mother, because you gotta make it, and it was wonderful. So when you mentioned about the 4 jobs, yes, it was like freelancer jobs. So one was like from 5 a.m. to 7, so 2 hours of interpreting. Because he was flexible, and that was before my son woke up. Then the other one was while he was in school, then the other, and so forth. And so that's how I did it. And in between, I was doing my business, but I didn't do it alone. I really took advantage of all the government help that there is out there available. For example, from the SBA, Small Business Administration. You know, I was there in the Center of Entrepreneurship in the Fashion Square Mall in Orlando, where it's really amazing. And I was there, and I was surprised that most of the time when I went to these offices to knock on doors, I was almost the only one in this place. And these people have such amazing resources, but...
So if you're in Orlando, this Center for Entrepreneurship, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And I think it's still there in the Fashion Square Mall, right near Baldwin Park, right near the Orlando Executive Airport. And by the way, that mall is usually like empty anytime I walk in it, and not to mention
nobody would think
center.
that that's there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the Small Business Administration, which is like a government agency from the federal government. There's a lot of grants that are given out to help small businesses in a lot of ways. Also, the other thing that you did was you didn't have to be certified to be an interpreter, right? But it gives you a leg up when you are certified. You went through the courses, you paid the fees, you studied hard for the test. It definitely probably helped you just learning all that information, but also then you get certified, you get the attention of people who want somebody who's proven, who's certified. And now you're also hiring people who are certified.
Correct. This has changed, though. Nowadays, they are requiring the courts, and I'm glad that they are. They're requiring that people do bring on a certified court interpreter to their proceedings, mostly because a certified court interpreter is an unbiased party. They have to abide by a code of ethics, meaning... confidentiality, meaning they know what they're doing. They will not give any input. They would just interpret what's being said accurately, and they will limit themselves to interpret, and that's what a good interpreter does.
Yeah.
So, but nowadays, actually, I have been exposed to more and more courts, judges, attorneys demanding that the interpreter is certified, which is great.
Yeah. And then, I also just love the story of, being motivated as a mother, especially a single mother, to just do anything you could to help your child. And it's really amazing when you said you had 4 different freelance jobs at one time, and to listen to you talk about the hours that you worked around your son's schedule. He's young, he's waking up, he's getting ready for school, then he's in school, you're back to work. Then he's out of school, then you're off work. I mean, but you're not really stopping. This is what a lot of people don't realize with women and mothers in particular, how much you're just constantly really working, because even though you weren't working your job from, say, 7 to 8 in the morning or whatever, you're working as a mother, getting your son up, getting him ready for school, maybe taking him to school, packing a lunch, all these things, picking him up from school, taking them to sports or, whatever they're involved with.
Yeah,
And
everything.
so it's a lot of work. A lot of times kids, maybe your son's grateful for it. I actually, he is, because I've met him. And he's doing something entrepreneurial as a 18-year-old, right?
As well, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think you could see that, but I think a lot of kids though don't realize, and at times they don't realize because they're kids and you're busy with your own social life and your school and your studies and all the things you're involved with, and sometimes you don't realize how that food gets on the table, how that roof gets over your head, and all the hard work. And usually you realize that later in life, maybe as you're making your way into the world, as you're maybe having kids, and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize my parents went through all this stuff for me, right? So anyway, but I think it's great that was something that motivated you as well. And so you were not, I loved that you also said at one point, you felt unstoppable. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say that I know that it sounds like, we like as parents say, oh, we did all this for you, the kids and stuff. But honestly, I really feel more grateful to the kid for having had that chance to be motivated. I mean, it was not that hard for me. It was just such a joy to do it for Tika. And I know I sound like, oh my God, it's not like it's really like it gives you so much energy. And I felt unstoppable. Now he's 18. And I'm like, I need to find that motivation for myself now by myself. And that's even harder.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do it for your family because...
Well, maybe the motivation is you're going to see him go off into the world on a good foundation, with getting a college education and getting into the new career, and then empower you that, hey, you did some good work, Mom.
No, of course not. I mean, well, I always, now in my later years, now for 3 years or so, I've been doing yoga and I've been meditating, and I find that really people and situations are just there to teach you something, really, and the way you see things is your own reality. So all of this story is a wonderful story of excitement. I enjoyed all of that so much. It was not hard. It seems like a lot of work, but it's better to have all that than be idle and not
some
have
people
that.
use the term, that maybe people are workaholics and because they're always whatever, but and that could be true. You don't want to be too addicted to work, but also sometimes from the outside, somebody could see that you're really working hard and spending a lot of time on things. But on the inside, you're like, I like doing this.
I like doing this, and I like being a mom, and I loved. You live vicariously through your kids, and I thought it was wonderful. And my son, I was very lucky. He was super amazing and healthy. And I had a great time. And now, through yoga, I'm learning how to detach myself from my son and from that need to feed off of his energy. Because you know what? Everything was inside of me anyways from the beginning. But as a woman, we really put a lot of our energy source in motherhood. And it's all in our heads again.
Yeah. So tell me, yoga, how did you get into it, and how has it helped you in all parts of your life?
Oh my gosh, it's been the most wonderful experience. I started when my son became, a teenager, and then after, teenagers is hard, but it's not, they're not hard to deal with. They are just naturally evolving and developing. It's you who don't catch up to the changes. It's so fast, and you just want to keep having the little baby, right?
Yeah.
So there's a clash because they don't want to be treated like babies. So I really learned to just listen and quiet my mind. And by doing yoga meditation, I just learned it's so simple to breathe and focus on breathing. And when you do that, all the problems go away. I know it sounds like magic, but they do, because then you focus in the moment. like in the present moment, and you forget about blaming yourself or anybody else, and that gave me a lot of peace and energy to continue and to adapt to the changes of being a mom of a teenager.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's good. So yeah, yoga has a lot of movements that can be like, similar to stretching in some ways, right? There's some stretches in there, but also a lot of breath work, right? And by the way, I'm in the middle of reading a book called Breath, and I forget the name of the author. It's killing me, but I'm only about halfway through, but it's talking about, it's helping you learn how to breathe. My friend Carter Fowler, who was on this podcast last year, he recommended the book first. We talked about it a little bit on that episode. I forget what number episode that was, 116 or something like that. But so learning how to breathe is good. And also, I don't know if they teach this with you, but there's a whole section in this book about you shouldn't breathe through your mouth, only through your nose. Anyway, a lot of fascinating stuff. But yoga, it's very concentrated. It's great because I actually think any kind of, say, fitness or just getting outside or just getting, just doing something where you're both physically and mentally, you kind of leave your day-to-day job, your day-to-day life, whatever it is. And it's kind of, those moments that you get a release from whatever, maybe it's being a mom,
Absolutely.
maybe it's working hard, whatever. And so some people go for a run. I like to play tennis as well. Maybe people go to the gym. Those things are really great physically, but also I have found that your mind kind of goes in another place as well when you're exercising. But yoga, it's like the whole thing. I don't know what it's called. It's like the whole practice is all revolving around that total release. And you're talking about breath work. We know a lot of great, say monks or whatever that get really focused on a lot of this. So speaking of which, you do yoga on a regular basis, but you've also gone on some yoga retreats. I heard you somewhat recently went to India. So tell us about your travels to India and where this practice of yoga has taken you.
Well, no, that was an amazing trip. I had never been to Asia before, and I went to India in January of this year. And I went to India because that's the birthplace of yoga. So I said, if I'm going to do something, I was looking for a retreat. And I said, why not India? So I did, and it was amazing. I learned so much. I mean, the yoga that we practice here is amazing. I have amazing teachers in the studio that I practice in Orlando. But India, I mean, it's a lifestyle. So not everybody practices yoga like we know, as we know it. But yoga is a lifestyle, so it's a passion for life. It's being present. Really, the purpose of yoga, of these movements and stretches and balancing poses, is so that we can sit down comfortably and breathe effectively and be in the present moment. That is the whole purpose of it. Eventually, is to really meditate. That's why the monks, the really enlightened monks, ultimately they just go on retreat and they sit down, quiet, and they don't move because they can breathe. That's all you need, apparently, in life. So,
Important.
So, no, it was amazing. It was like a 25-day retreat where we did yoga all day long. We meditated. I stayed on a tent, and it was amazing. I mean, these people really have this energy about them where service to others is the most important thing, and being kind is it, starting with yourself. Mm-hmm. So it was all about self-care. And India, it was amazing. People told me all kinds of things about India. It's chaotic, it's this and that, it could be dangerous. I'm like, I'm just going. And I went there and I found the most amazing people, kind, caring, and really like easy going and nurturing. And my teachers there were super tough, but they make you feel like you can do it. There's no doubt. There's no doubts because, again, the obstacles are in our minds.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not like, oh, I cannot do that pose. It was like, no, you just start with this one. You start with it. There was no, I cannot do this because I have this injury. It was, no, you can do this other modification of this. And there was a 90-year-old woman who was there doing yoga. And it was so inspiring. And so I just met so many people who really it just make you feel like there's nothing impossible in this life. And I came back with no desire to wear any shoes. I was so used to not shoe because you take you take your shoes off before you enter any room, any space. So we were just not, I didn't wear shoes for about a month.
That's funny. Well, your journey to India, really amazing that you took the leap to go there for 6 weeks, a yoga retreat, but also, again, another situation where you've got people that are like, hey, be careful, you shouldn't go there, it's dangerous, it's chaotic, it's, why go to India? There's other places to go to. But you did it, and you found a great experience. I've never been to India, and I can't talk. I have friends that have been there. They love it. I'd love to go there someday. It's the world. Is it now the world's most populous country? It's right there with China. It's pretty close.
It's right there with China, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was talking to you earlier off the podcast, and you're from Colombia. And I mentioned that I had a friend that is going to be in Brazil soon, and that I'd love to go to Brazil sometime. I have another friend who my friend Isa Petriata, who's from Brazil, who lives in the U.S. now, and she, is trying to encourage me to go to Brazil at some point. Maybe we'll do a Fearless Journeys Brazil. But then you said to me something when you were a 12-year-old in Colombia, you and your other 12-year-old friend went to Brazil on your own.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we went to Brazil. I mean, her aunt, who is actually a theater actress, lived there. And so we stayed with her, but we did go by ourselves to Rio de Janeiro when we were 12.
So you traveled on a plane from Colombia to Brazil.
Yeah.
You get off the plane and you're with her aunt?
Yes.
Okay.
But they were amazing people. They were the theater people, so they were very open, and we were able to walk by ourselves on the streets of Rio de Janeiro. And we had a great time. And the thing about this trip was that I had actually saved money from my own work because I worked.
What were you doing at the age of 12 that enabled you to save money?
Well, every now and then I would do TV commercials in Colombia.
Oh, so being on the Agents of Innovation podcast YouTube channel is no big deal. Okay.
That was a long time.
You did TV commercials in Colombia as a child.
It was a long time ago. And so I was able to save enough money to buy my ticket to Brazil and go on this trip. So it was a big deal because I was paying for my own trip. But yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking because we were walking, the two of us, by ourselves in the streets of Rio. And,
I'm not sure I would advise two 12-year-old girls to be walking in the streets of Rio de Janeiro by themselves. But you did it. You went. And tell us, what were you going to say about that?
Oh, no. I mean, it was fine. It was safe. And we, the thing about traveling like that is that you learn. Mm-hmm. We didn't speak Portuguese. So I learned like a little bit of Portuguese. I still remember Portuguese that I learned back then. And that's how you learn. And it's not about, so when you travel, it's not only about learning the language or what you already know before you went there. You just find some things that are surprising that you would never know about until you are there.
Yeah.
So, we were exposed to many things, just like small things, how the bus works, how the doors open. I don't know, when I went to Barcelona, I didn't realize that like in Europe, the doorknobs are like in the middle of the door. In India, yeah, we all know about the yoga and all that, but you know what I didn't know? That people are like in the middle of the chaotic tuk-tuks, monkeys, cows, literally at the same time in the same place where you're on the street. People are honking super loud all the time, but nobody is upset. There's no road rage. I was like, this is it was so confusing to me. But you will never you would have never had this experience or like opportunity to realize that about India unless you were in the middle of the cow, of the monkey, and the tuk-tuks, and people were smiling and saying namaste, and everybody's yelling and honking. It was crazy, amazing.
Yeah,
and I felt safe.
That's what I love about travel is just you learn. It's the same concept of when you start a company, you learn by doing. You learn through traveling. You learn about other cultures. Maybe it's language. Maybe it's ways of life doing things. Maybe it's doorknobs being in different places or the way people get through traffic. It's just, and you could look at a lot of things in books and you could watch videos and things, but there's nothing like being there and experiencing things for yourself. Did you get a chance to go to the Taj Mahal?
I did. I actually made a trip there in a taxi to see that specifically, and it was beautiful. But I don't know. It's a museum, and it was I don't know. It's just weird to have all that amazing. I mean, the building is amazing, beautiful. I took the best pictures, but nobody lives there. I don't know. I know it's a king made this for him and his wife. It's just weird to have all that built around two tombs
for no real use, right? Yeah.
But it was amazing, and it's beautiful. Just to say I was there, and then also people there are really beautiful. I was there, and of course, there was a photographer who said, I can take pictures. Like, well, I have my phone, and then hey, let me take a picture, and you tell me if you like it. And the guy poses me, says, put this hand here, this hand here. And I'm like, oh my God, I look amazing. Thank you. Yes. And so I hired him to take pictures of me at the Taj Mahal. I would have never been able to do that amazing job that he did. So it's just everybody and the tour guide and everybody's helping you out. I just felt so taken care of.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, it just also shows you we may have views or images of what other people may be. We may have no views or images of what other people may be. We just may not have thought of it. But you go there, and just like when I went to Guatemala, and I come back. I mean, I lived in Guatemala a year. I've been there multiple times. We've done some group trips there, but I have to say, and I've been to about 28 countries in the world. Not India yet, or Brazil, but I would say that. I feel like people in Guatemala, I mean, I tell people this, they're just the most hospitable people in the world. They're just very welcoming and warm, and you walk in, you meet them, and they tell you you're already part of their family. That just doesn't exist. So a couple things going back to, I wanted to ask you about, so we heard about the TV commercials you did. Was that your first job in life? Did you have any other first jobs before that?
No, that was my first job.
That was your first job. How do you get that?
I think my mom got me into that. As a kid, as a child, your mom takes you to these castings, and because I did that when I was a baby. I think I did one for Johnson & Johnson or something like that.
As a baby? Wow, a Columbia Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah. So, and then I did some others, but I enjoyed doing this, but then as a teenager, I kind of stopped because then it was either going through the route of becoming an actress or doing that, or maybe more modeling. And I just didn't feel like I was this sexy model type. I was more of a like the role of like the daughter of the family in a commercial,
Okay.
and then the young adult, and then and that's what I do now. I've done a few commercials here.
Really?
Um,
How long ago?
at the big last year.
Wow. What kind of commercial was it?
It was a visit to Orlando.
Oh, cool.
And the role was actually my role, my actual role, which was I was a young entrepreneur.
A young entrepreneur. And were you in the commercial? Are you speaking in Spanish?
No, I'm not speaking. I'm just, there's
just-
no speaking
you're
roles.
just modeling?
Well, no, I am actually acting as an entrepreneur.
Hmm. And what was the point of the commercial?
I was to promote Visit Orlando as an entrepreneurial hub.
Wow. And how were you discovered for that?
I just went to an agency and so they called me and I did the casting and.
Well, I have a feeling if we sit here for another 10, 20, 30 minutes right now, I'm going to find more and more information out about Camila. But really, when I met you maybe about 2 months ago through our friends, Ben and Christina Newman, and I started listening to what you did. And first of all, we were introduced because we have mutual friends, but also I had just been to your native country of Colombia for the first time earlier this year. And so, okay, wow, that's interesting. I meet a Colombian here in Orlando. I mean, there's a lot of Colombians here in Orlando,
Yes.
And in Florida in general. But okay, cool, that's great. And then I learned you started a company, translations and interpretations. Okay, tell me a little bit more about that, right? And so I thought it was just super interesting, your story, and then how, you're an entrepreneur. You came here as an immigrant, and one of the things. I recently published a book called The American Dream is a Terrible Thing to Waste. And we actually recount a lot of the stories of people that had been on some of the first 100 episodes of this podcast. But as I was going through and thinking about all the different common, actually outlining, not just thinking about, but pulling together what were the common characteristics of all these people on the first 100 episodes that I could basically share with other people. And that here's what we can learn from these folks. But as we were piecing it together, the number one thing that stands out, that's even like outside of the top 10, because it's really the number one thing, it's the mindset. It's that entrepreneurs just think differently. And I mean, we've heard this several times from you on this interview here. We've heard your mindset of, which a 12-year-old going to Brazil. We've heard the mindset as an adult going to India. We've heard the mindset of being inspired by a book and having this passion to start a company. The mindset of doing anything because you're a mother and you're gonna help your kid, or even taking any job, right? And just and learning and doing that job well, packing those screws well, right? And so you've been able to take these leaps, and I don't know, there's just something you stand out in the sense from most people, because I think entrepreneurs stand out from most people. They think differently. They have a different mindset. It doesn't matter if somebody encouraged you or discouraged you. Great to get encouragement. And I think we don't do this alone, right? We learn from others. We get opportunities and things like that. But you just, that's really, I hope people take a lot of inspiration from your story. But also, the one thing I also do say in the beginning of my book is about no matter, here in the United States, especially people that are born here. Now, my dad was born in Cuba, so I'm a son of an immigrant. Mm-hmm. But even people who are born here, we take for granted like the freedoms, we take for granted the opportunities, and a lot of times we also debate the role of government. Maybe we don't like the way things are going in the economy. We don't like what's the government doing, this, like, whatever. We have all sorts of debates. But what I said the immigrant walks into this country and they don't really like necessarily see our debates. I mean, maybe they kind of do in the periphery, but they're more like wow, like they just see opportunity everywhere. Yeah. Right. And so, and then they a lot of times we get this, oh, immigrants are taking our jobs, right? Or the other side of it is, well, immigrants are doing the jobs people don't want to do, right? But I think it's also just the immigrant comes in here with a mindset, and I relate it to the mindset of an entrepreneur. The immigrant is usually somebody who has left their country. That in itself is taking a risk. Like you're leaving your homeland, the place that's safe, and maybe it's not safe for some people, right? But at least it was a place that you knew, to go to a place that you don't know what's going to happen next. And you're dealing with a lot of different issues. You don't know the language perhaps. And so it's somebody who has taken a risk. So they already have that mindset of being fearless in a sense, being bold. And then also that mindset of I'm willing to just do any kind of work. If it's mowing somebody's lawn, if it's whatever it is, I'm going to just do the work. And so you see, and they're willing to work hard, long hours, to just make it and to succeed. And a lot of times at the root of that is the closest thing that's the most important to them is their family. And I remember hearing my grandparents who came here from Cuba, and I sat down with them when I was in college, did an interview with them. And I remember going through all the points of why they left Cuba. You know, Cuba had turned communist and they left. Mm-hmm. But my grandparents were living kind of an upper middle class lifestyle in Cuba. They came here and in the 60s, early 60s, and their life for the first 10 years was really, really difficult. My grandfather had to work 3 jobs, not great jobs. My grandmother had to, clean office buildings in the middle of the night. They barely saw each other. They were, my dad and my uncle, and then later my aunt, they had to grow up, in lower economic conditions than maybe they would have had they stayed in Cuba, perhaps. So I remember asking them, if it was worth it. And then the answer I got really told me that it wasn't that they felt the hardness on themselves, but that they were thinking about their kids and ultimately their grandkids and the next generation. And that really made me think like, wow, maybe that generation was different. They were really thinking more, not just about themselves, but about their kids and grandkids and trying to make life better for them. So anyway, I just think the immigrant walks into this country and sees a lot of opportunities, and many of them do something about it, like yourself. And so you not only got some great jobs, you created a company, and now you're providing a service that maybe it's a very unique niche, providing translations and interpretations for people in all sorts of business and government roles. And so it's very admirable. So you are literally the embodiment of the American dream, Camila. So just wanted to get your feedback on maybe some of that I said.
No, thank you so much for acknowledging my efforts. But you know what? I mean, I really think that you can be, because everybody is in the same environment, but it's up to us to open our eyes and see, put the positive lens of the surroundings. Like you said, some people here, then, Americans sometimes, and everybody listens to the news, and sometimes it gets too heavy and negative, and you complain, and we complain about things, but if you really switch that around and you focus on what you have, it's amazing. And you really do way more by focusing on what you have than what you don't have. And so you know that, and we all know that, but we don't practice that. And if we practice gratefulness and faith, not in the religious sense, but faith in, and that's what people have when they come to this country. They have faith in that dream. And when you have faith, you're unstoppable, period. You are. I mean, that's what I felt as a mother. You like a lioness. You just do it. You go for it without any hesitation. And it's the love. It's really the love for your kids. But then you can find the love for anything else. And I really feel like I have to thank the environment, this country, these people, like anybody who really gave me access to the information that I needed. Because the information is out there. We just have to go and get it. And then focus on your dreams. Because if we focus on complaining, we just complain. And there's no solution for that. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we can say, the glass is half full or half empty. And I really think that the fact that I'm here, I'm healthy, I'm talking to you, I met you, we have so many people in common. So many things had to happen for this conversation to occur. it's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And I really love one of the things you said here is you said faith, and faith that in that you can do it, and it's a matter of belief, and it's a matter of attitude, right? You also said we all live in the same environment. Maybe what I described was that the immigrant is coming into this environment with different eyes,
mindset,
right? Different
exactly.
mindset, different seeing something from a different perspective than maybe somebody who's been here before. But we're all here, and this is we're all living in the same environment, and it's how we approach the environment that we are given. And luckily, we are in probably living in the greatest country in the greatest time in history, especially with all the access and the comforts we have and all these sorts of things. And so, yeah, like what you said, do what you can do. I also look at it, even if things were bad, we have two options, right? You can look at it negatively, you can complain. I just don't see the point in living a life that you complain about things. Like, yes, we can, like, there's things that happen that you can complain, but I would rather just say, okay, what can I do about it, right? And like, I think when you have that mindset, anything is possible. So, and you're unstoppable. So this has been great, Camila. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for being an agent of innovation and being on the Agents of Innovation podcast. This has been really great. Again, if you liked this, like the whatever platform you're on, give us a like, write a review, give us 5 stars, whatever. Also, write some comments what you think about this episode and Camila's story. We really appreciate the feedback, and hopefully we can get you involved in some way in the Fearless Journeys community so you can interact with great innovators like this. But Camila, I'll just leave you with some last words here, whatever you'd like to say to the audience.
Thank you, Francisco, for having me. I had never talked about my whole story like this before, so it's really empowering. I thank you for giving the platform for me to do this and share my story with everybody out there. And I hope that you take what you need and leave the rest behind, because that's the power that you have, is to pick and choose whatever it gives you energy and power to live your dream. So I thank you, and I'm super grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your time, and we're really just happy to bring stories like this and your story to more people, and hopefully people can get something out of it. And I'm glad that you were able to share it, and hopefully everybody else can share Camila's story with other people. So thank you for being an inspiration for living and embodying the American dream.
Thank you.